Police work, by its very nature, is inherently dangerous, with stretched budgets, dwindling resources, and a tired workforce. The police in America today are asked to do more than they ever have before. We ask our police to wear many hats, from psychologist to peacemaker to problem solver. And according to the U.S. Department of Justice, Illinois Division of the Office of Justice Programs, it's estimated, due to the frequency and severity of critical incidents and the exposure to them, it contributes to the overall likelihood of developing post-traumatic stress disorder for America's police forces across the country. Research suggests that police officers experience higher levels of PTSD than the general population, with an estimated prevalence of a percentage of between 7 to 19%. For my friend, Justin Hesse, he's been a law enforcement officer for more than 5 years now, and my friend, overall, he's been in the profession for over a decade, and he's seen grueling challenges, but has always found solace in the promise of working out. However, even though he knew the importance of working out and staying fit amongst the chaos, he used to work out 5 or 6 days a week, but his heart simply wasn't in it. His mind was always elsewhere, and he was constantly exhausted. He found comfort in food. However, he felt as if he was letting his coworkers down, and he needed a shift in thinking, momentum, and action. He was constantly gaining belly fat, and his stress levels were through the roof. His shift in momentum and thinking led him to pivot his career to health and fitness in an effort to help himself and his fellow cops alike. Today he's committed to helping officers navigate their way towards a healthier and fitter lifestyle despite their unsociable hours and eating from gas stations. Justin's been a health and fitness professional since 2016, and he's coached over 300 people, including more than 100 cops and other first responders. Additionally, he is also a military police sergeant in the Minnesota Army National Guard. He opened Blue Line Fitness in 2021 as his way to continue to serve those who serve in blue. And he joined me this week to tell me about his journey of helping cops and other first responders, his own personal journey as a law enforcement professional, and how he helps other first responders, especially cops, deal with the stress management portion of the job, while also making sure that they optimize their physical and mental peak performance. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. Justin, if you're ready, I'll formally welcome you to the program, my friend. And I'm super excited to learn about your journey in fitness with the police and everything in between, my friend. Great to see you, and thank you for a few minutes today, buddy.
You're welcome. Let's get rocking.
Absolutely. Now, my friend, as you know, being a police officer is a stressful commitment, one that people make willingly, of course, but sometimes, the mental health of police officers gets overlooked and underfunded, my friend. So I wanted to begin our conversation by giving you the platform to tell me why the mental health, specifically of police, is so important to you, my friend.
Well, I mean, it's important because number one, we spend so much time on the physical health aspect, like exercise and nutrition, and not enough time, I guess, on the mental stuff. Or it could be part of the stigma, the old school mentality of like, this is a tough job, tighten up the bootstraps, power through, and then kind of just, ignore your feelings and emotions and that kind of stuff. And, I think what the general public can think of what policing is like from like TV shows, right? You have NCIS and The Rookie or Law and Order, and you think you know what policing is, and then sometimes you go into the world, at least when I did, and it's just completely different. I could go on many calls that I still remember to this day, but we're all human beings nonetheless. And then some of the things that we see or do takes a weight on someone's shoulders. And I guess to answer your question, why is mental health so important? Well, I went into the field, Kevin. I wanted to be someone's superhero when they were in most trouble. I feel a lot of police officers can relate to that. Yet, because of the dangers of the job, because of the job itself, we can end up being a shell of ourselves if we're not careful. We could end up a statistic like cardiovascular disease, alcoholism, drug abuse, divorce, suicide. And if we don't take care of our mental health on a daily, weekly basis, then we just end up a statistic. And I don't want that for our guardians and heroes today. So that's why I'm very big into the mental health.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I wanted to also talk to you about the question that most police officers ask today about why it's still worth doing this job, and how do you think we can encourage other people to get into the field of policing? What are your thoughts there?
Well, number one, I think just to listen to the majority of the voice, but it's also a quiet voice. What's the voice that gets most heard? It might be the minority of like fuck the police and that kind of stuff, or the police reform and like abolish police, and that's what gets the media attention and that kind of stuff. But I think number one, just know that there are people that do still appreciate the police. Now, they may not always voice it all the time. They may not always show it, but there are. I think part of that is that for police officers to be connected with their community or be connected with community groups, tribes, get around normal people so that they can also like appreciate you. Sometimes as cops, you just kind of hang out with other cops and sometimes just talk about work. So I think and there still are, obviously there's not as many. But also I think whether it's just from a general public or whether it's the politicians, city governments, like you got to kind of like have a unified approach to show support for the police.
Yeah, I understand, my friend, that you heard a statistic back in 2020 that really shaped your advocacy and passion for this issue. So I'm wondering if you can share that with me, Bonnie.
Yeah, there are a couple moments in 2020. Like in January 2020, most departments, they have an annual use of force training. Use of force training, think like you have to do like handcuffing, baton training, taser, defensive tactics, that stuff. We also had a presentation on peer support. Peer support as in like, hey, there's members of your agency to be that extended support, like not a therapist, but another cop you could talk to. And our trainer spoke of two statistics from 2019. There are like about 140, 150 some line of duty deaths, whether that's firearms, getting hit by a car, vehicle pursuit crash, whatever. Those 140, those 150, like police officers, they train for those. What was staggering was the 230 or 240 reported suicides. And that was reported because obviously there could be a lot higher number. So it was staggering because let's just say there's an even 300 because there was not reported. I'm twice as likely to end my own life than than all the other 140, 150 other deaths that I could train for. So that's number one. And then also like with like 2020, obviously we had COVID. We don't need to go down that. Like obviously that brought a lot of challenges. We also had challenges with, what followed with George Floyd and a big outcry for police reform, abolish the police. So there are a lot of moments in there where I knew that physical and mental and emotional health was already we'll say a challenge for police officers, but I think like that year when I felt like quote unquote a lot of people wouldn't have a police officer's back, I just felt, and put on top of that the rate of suicide, I just felt very pushed, or I guess I felt moved, motivated, whatever you want to call it, to like, hey, like if not me support the police with their physical and mental health, then who will? So that was kind of a little of my stories from 2020.
Yeah, Justin, forgive me, but I'm going to be ask you a frank question, my friend.
Yeah.
There are plenty of people who have preconceived notions of what the police do and how they're supposed to interact with the public, but I hesitate to tell you that people that criticize the police don't really know the full spectrum of what they're asked to do from a day-to-day perspective. We ask police to do a lot of different things and play psychologist and doctor and therapist without giving them the mental health resources they need to do the job, like a therapist or a psychotherapist who could come on calls for high-risk calls, just for as an example. So I'm curious to ask you your opinion on the mental health sort of framework of a police officer, what we're asking police to do versus the resources that we actually give them to do that job. I'm curious to get your thoughts there.
So I guess the question is like, what are proper expectations the public could have a police officer in their actual duties, or maybe is the question of what resources should be available for their mental health?
Yeah, a little bit of both in terms of bridging the gap between the mental health resources that are available, what you think still needs to be given to police? Because, I think police are asked to do a lot with not a lot of resources depending on the budgets of your city.
Sure.
So I'm curious to get your thoughts on the perception, the reality of the job, and how we can better support police from a mental health perspective.
Well, number one, it all starts with the police officer itself, too. They have to acknowledge and want to accept help. There's a little thing called ego. We all have ego where like we may protect ourselves from saying where we don't need help. And even sometimes when people like are okay, we'll just take like therapy, for instance, or talking to a therapist. People will talk to a therapist or get therapy when they quote unquote hit rock bottom. But you can talk to a therapist before you even hit rock bottom. So you can always be in a growth mindset. First, the officer needs to be in a growth mindset of try to improve their circumstance, because in some way or fashion, we can always improve. There are more. So once that happens, again, we are not limited by our resources. We are limited by our resourcefulness. I believe that's like a Tony Robbins quote. So many departments, I mean, at least the one I'm a part of, are getting better with it. You can start small by like getting people trained in peer support. So you're having actual people within your sheriff's office, your police department, go through training. So it's, I mean, again, you're not going to be a licensed therapist, but a cop might be more willing to talk to another cop when they're having a bad day, when they're having tough moments. So I'd say every agency should have a peer support group. There are more agencies that are getting contracts with therapists, like professional therapy groups. Like for me, I get like an annual, they call it checkup from the neck up. You talk to a therapist. I mean, you could be as in depth as you want. You could just talk about hunting and fishing or motorcycling, or you can talk about things that bother you. And then along with that annual checkup, we're given like 6 sessions a year. Allowing a police department to work out on duty. Obviously like calls dependent and staffing, but sometimes the relief negative stress, as we know, is through movement and getting a workout in. You can go to extent of hiring a health professional, personal trainer, and that kind of stuff. So you're helping someone's holistic health. But so there's a lot of possibilities. But again, it starts for like how resourceful that a department wants to be. And also then the officers to like take initiative to then use said resources.
And how creative they want to be, right?
And how creative they want to be, because cops are trained to be 5 things. And I take this from, I might butcher his name. I thought it was like Kevin Williams, but he has a book called Breach Point. So I'm not going to take credit for it. But cops are trained to be 5 things. They're trained to be pessimistic, non-trusting, control freaks who fight change, and they assess blame. So they don't like change. They'll point the finger at someone else or something else. They're often pessimistic. They try to control everything, and they don't trust the process. Well, so cops also just need to be more positive. They need to be trusting that the departments might be looking out for their best interests, or that they trust that the therapist is looking out for their best interest. Not to take control of everything and just take some ownership that, hey, like, maybe I'm not okay. Maybe I got a few things I can figure out, and that's okay. So but yes, as you said, you have to like then be creative in using those resources that you have. So
Yeah, absolutely. And, Justin, I believe life is about relationship building and networking. Justin, there's a sign in my office that says life is a constant game of networking. And when I was
mhm.
uh, sitting down to do this with you this afternoon, I was curious to get your thoughts on how we improve the relationship between the public and the police. Because I believe if we can create a line of connection and understanding, the relationship between the two parties would improve. So, what are your thoughts on improving relationship or public relations with the public when it comes to having a more amicable relationship with the police? What do you think is the key there, my friend?
Yeah, so there's going to be agencies that take a proactive approach by doing community events. I mean, I just had a community event called Badges for Bobbers. Literally, we had some sponsors who gave away some like fishing poles and tackle boxes. Kids got to come fish for free, and they got to hang out with the cop while fishing. So like building community relationships like that. I mean, that's what you call it. There's one you can have like coffee with a cop. There's usually community events like that. Going Christmas shopping, kids can go Christmas shopping with cops. Even outside of those singular events, sometimes agencies have open houses. They put out all their cool stuff like the SWAT vehicle, just the bike patrol and all these kind of things. And a lot of agencies, they might have like a citizens academy, as in, they come to the police department and, each week they have like a certain topic, but they kind of just go through the ins and outs of like how a police department's ran. What are all the different functions? So I think just taking advantage of more of those opportunities to engage with a police officer or a sheriff's office, outside of getting pulled over or anything like that.
Yeah, absolutely, my friend. And Justin, you may not know this about my body, but I was born with what's called spastic quadriplegia cerebral palsy. Simply means that I don't have enough oxygen to walk normally, and I found out, buddy, at the age of 9 that I wouldn't be able to walk for the duration of my life without the assistance of a walker because of the severity of my cerebral palsy. But fitness is important to me, buddy, because if I don't move my muscles, they contract faster than most people. And I know that you have a soft spot in your heart and that you've sort of rededicated yourself to helping cops and first responders really value their fitness, my friend. So tell me about the transition to wanting to help cops and first responders with their fitness journey, my friend. Tell me more.
Yeah, I mean, why specifically fitness? Because how it transformed my life. I mean, 15 years ago, I was a 17-year-old skinny fat kid. Skinny fat meaning, yeah, I was only 177 pounds, so maybe weight wise, people wouldn't think I'm overweight. But I had small, like, didn't have a lot of muscle and had like body fat on my stomach, and my pecs. Long story short, I just dealt with a lot of bullying in high school, and it led me to one night where I thought no one would give a shit if I'm dead, and I held my dad's shotgun in my mouth, and I thought to myself, I mean, I got past that, and when I went to college, like I had a roommate who we lifted 5 days a week, 2 hours, 3 hours a day. Because my roommate, Brent, we all know a guy who has like that swagger. Not, not even confidence, swagger. Like he had boulder shoulders, a big chest. Girls loved him. guys want to be him. I'm kind of like, I want that confidence. So, I mean, days turn into weeks, weeks turn into months of me just dedicating to lifting and running. And, it changed my holistic life. When I think about holistic life, not only my physical health, yeah, I gained muscle, but it made me feel emotionally better having self-confidence. Because I had self-confidence, my social health got better. Where before, as a 17-year-old, I could hardly talk to girls. I thought they were like a freaking, I don't know, alien or what. I just thought it was I was that socially awkward kid. And I gained my confidence to like just talk to girls or just even talk to people, build friendships, meaningful friendships. And it gave me existential health, as in like I have a purpose in this life. I went from a nobody to like, hey, he's the fit guy. Like if you got a problem with like workouts, like go to him. So I felt like I had purpose in this world, and we should all have like a sense of purpose in this world. So it transformed my life, and then I just became a cop. So then when I felt it was a time where, I don't necessarily want to make policing my long-term career. I want to take the passion that I have for policing without me doing it and use my purpose with fitness fueled by that passion and help a profession that I respect the most. So I guess, why fitness? Because again, like I probably wouldn't be here today talking to you if I didn't work out as much as I did, or if I didn't build the confidence that I did.
Yeah, absolutely. And tell me about how Blue Line Fitness, which is the name of the company you've created, has really created that sense of camaraderie and health with the emotional as well as physical health of the people that you help each and every day about it. Tell me more.
Yeah, so I tell my students from the get-go, like, yeah, we're going to talk about workouts, and we're going to talk about eating healthy, but people can get workout plans and eating plans online. You can Google it, you can go on YouTube, social media, and find that stuff. But often what gets in our way isn't information, it's taking action or implementing that said information. And what gets in the way of taking action? Usually emotions. How many, like, there'd be people that tell me like, well, I'm not motivated, so I'll skip the workout. Well, I had a bad day, so I'm going to have a greasy cheeseburger and fries. Well, I had a long day at work, so instead of doing the workout, I'm going to sit in front on the recliner in front of the TV and have some alcoholic drinks. I had emotional fitness coaching for 16 months. I paid a coach who helped me with my emotions so that I could master my emotions instead of the emotions mastering me. So how do I do that with my students? Well, one, providing a space where we can talk. They can send me texts. They can send me voice notes. Providing a space without judgment. Bringing different perspectives. We all, including myself, have limiting beliefs of our own potential, things that we can or can't do. So sometimes I will commonly tell my students, I give compassion to when things like you're going through a tough spot or you're going through a tough phase, but I'm not going to buy into the BS limiting excuses that are going to limit to your full potential. Because I always keep their greater self in mind. So challenging them in a way, out of love, obviously not, not out of disrespect and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and Justin, I'm curious to know whether you think there's strength and vulnerability for cops, and what sort of advantages do you think come from police being vulnerable?
Wow, that's a really great question. One, I think relatability, because sometimes, like with vulnerability, it's kind of like, oh, well, that person is kind of just like me, like everyone can have a certain bias again of like what the police are based on their own personal experiences, based on what they see on TV, whether it's a show or the news, based on a friend's or a relative's experience with the police. So I guess a level of vulnerability can just be relating like, hey, like we are just as human as everybody else. Now, when we put out, like when we are, well, we'll just say like a major sports athlete, right? Like a major sports athlete, like a quarterback, when they throw a interception, they can't just have, they just can't panic on the sideline. They can't just have an emotional breakdown. Why? Because they still have to go out and perform. Same with a cop, like when they're in uniform and that kind of stuff, like they have a duty, to uphold and that. So like maybe while they're on the clock, they just can't break down. But as you said, they should be vulnerable to someone at some point. That's why like I take pride in being a coach myself, is that like I give people that space to be vulnerable. People tell me often like they may not even be a coaching client of mine, and they'd be like, I've told you things I've never told anybody before. And it's just all about providing a space with no judgment, providing compassion, and just acknowledging it's okay to not be okay. So I think there's a level of vulnerability also in healing.
Yeah.
So our ego will always set aside of like why, you can just toughen through. So I think to grow and heal is also another positive of vulnerability.
Yeah, absolutely, my friend. And I want to talk about your individual journey. I know that you're still active in the Minnesota Army National Guard, and I know that you were a cop for a while before you transitioned to your fitness journey, my friend. So I'm curious to ask you about your passion and purpose individually for the profession and how you've evolved over time as well.
Involved as a human, involved as a cop, involved as like what do you mean? Like how have I involved in which areas?
Everything in between, my friend, so you can attack that question however you would wish.
Sure. Well, how I've evolved. One, I'm a part of a mastermind coaching group that I pay for, where they take me outside of my comfort zone. So, kind of the one of the best ways to anyone can evolve is getting a mentor. Like, hey, like it's like basically surround yourself with people where you want to get to. So I have, coaches where I want to get to their level, not only say from a financial standpoint, but from a holistic health standpoint as well. It's just not grinding with work, burning the midnight oil per se, but like being healthy and happy in your relationships, being healthy and happy with your own physical health. I've evolved by obviously parenting, becoming a dad. You'll evolve really quickly. I try to evolve, in my relationships, like my marriage, just by like having that growth mindset of, like trying to just improve just a little more, just improve by 1%. Just Otherwise, I try to keep up with a self-development book or a podcast. So right now, or a audio book. So right now, the book I am reading is 10x is easier than 2x. I think it's by Dan Hardy, Ben Hardy. I might be messing that up. Ben Hardy, I think, and Dan Sullivan. And The Big Leap, I think it's Guy Hendricks. I could be messing that up too. But so there's several ways where I'm trying to evolve.
Yeah, life is a constant game of adjustment and learning, isn't it?
Oh yes, I mean, if you're not growing, you're dying, and like we all have areas of where we can improve. Going from a mindset where I've learned of like, hey, that you're eager and excited for growth versus feeling inadequate, like I'm never good enough. Two different energy sources. Feeling inadequate's very negative, and you're never going to fill that hole. It's like a black hole. But growth, you're eager and excited to learn. So yes, it definitely, growth is important, but like make sure of like which energy is behind it as well is just as equally important.
Yeah, absolutely. And Justin, for anybody watching or listening to this today, my friend, I'm curious to ask you, what would you tell the general public who wants to support the police and really get behind the mission of what the police are supposed to do? So what do you think you would tell someone who says, I'm watching this today and I'm inspired to do what I can to support the police? What would be your roadmap you would give them to follow?
Well, I mean, you can always start small. Starting small by such as like if you ever encounter a police officer, like even if you get pulled over for speeding or whatever, just showing them genuine respect. Right? I mean, like you might be in a rush to work. It may feel like a nuisance or whatever you want to call it by having this cop pull you over, but you can still always give someone genuine respect. Number two, you can always obviously then like talk to that with your family members, friends, if they're always so quick to judge a police officer, maybe just like kind of piping up and just be like, well, what do you think was going through the police officer's mind? What do you think like their side of the story would be? And not being maybe like quick to, judge. Now you can take it a step further by you can look at your local agency's community events. They're going to have some events of some kind. Usually around this time of year is Night to Unite. That's where like police officers, usually it's an all hands on deck most of the time. And that's where a lot of police officers will go out into the communities and want to talk with people and that kind of stuff. So just talk to them and just see how their day is going. Just seeing like what are some like things to improve their community and how they can help out. So I'd say just start small with those actions.
Yeah, absolutely. And Justin, I want to revisit the idea of mindset and emotional resilience. How important you think those two things are interconnected? And what would you tell a cop that says, I really enjoy this profession, but I'm emotionally and mentally burnt out? How do you think cops can regenerate their emotional resilience? What are your thoughts there?
That's a great question. Again, we'll start with baby steps. Number one, worry about the things that what you control versus you can't control. There's a lot of things that a cop can't control, but they still worry about it. So just being very laser focused on like, hey, like control the things that you can. And most of the time, it's just yourself and your attitude. Number two, you can focus on the things you have or you don't have. If you focus on all the things that you don't have, you feel like you're always at a loss. But if you focus on the things that you do have, gratitude is one of the best ways to kind of pull you out of a slump. And also where your focus is on either the past, present, or the futures. If you're focused on everything in the past, the woulda, shoulda, coulda, you live in regret. If you focus so much on the future in a negative way, you can create yourself anxiety of fears that things that might happen that aren't actually there. It's just in your head versus staying in the present. And obviously to build your emotional resilience, obviously that it comes with, we talked about trying to remain positive, of hunting the good stuff, even when things are not going well. Mm-hmm. Understanding of when you are in a slump, it's sometimes we try so hard to not feel negative. We try so hard to not feel anxious or not feel depressed, not feel angry. And sometimes we will judge ourselves for maybe feeling that way. Number one, it's natural to get those feelings. We're human beings, but it's also our responsibility, or if you look at responsibility, the ability to respond appropriately to those emotions. You can either do it negatively by just eating your gut out, drinking, screaming and yelling at people, zoning out by watching television, or you can respond appropriately by doing what is maybe a harder choice, but it's a better one. Going for a walk, doing a workout, talking to your significant other or someone that you trust. So those are some things to build emotional resilience.
Yeah, and Justin, I've got 3 questions left for you. And the first is about mental clarity, my friend. For me, it's having conversations like this, and from a physical perspective, one of the ways I stay fit, buddy, is I swim and I lift weights all the time. So establishing mental clarity is important for me, not only from a emotional and physical perspective, but from a psychological one as well. And I can only imagine you would agree that it's important for cops to do the same thing. Would you agree with that?
Oh yes, I just watched a friend's Facebook story where it's a little dog, it's a little fat short dog kind of walking down the sidewalk, and he was like, I may be chunky, but I like to go for a run and listen to some beat music to improve my mental clarity or mental health or just to feel happier. So doing a workout is just as much as feeling better than looking better.
Yeah, absolutely. And Justin, I'm curious, what role do you think law enforcement has to play in healing societal divisions in today's society? How do you think cops can act as a bridge of unity and understanding? What are your thoughts there?
Boy, man, I think that's you have some really good questions, Kevin. What can they do their part? Well, I think sometimes they're just trying to be proactive by, going into their communities, the blocks that they serve, talking with some individuals about so you're being proactive about it than reactive. Going to your local city boards, county boards, and just talking to people about what might be the root causes, the root problems, and then what they can do about it, how the police could maybe be a resource. And sometimes it's not even about what the police do, what can they delegate, or at least what can they advise. So then other people of the community can also support and take part, so it's not all on the cop's shoulders.
Yeah, absolutely. And Justin, my final question for you today, my friend, is about individual, personal, and professional legacy. You mentioned that you recently became a dad, and I know that supporting the people you work with is vitally important to you. So, how do you want your personal and professional legacy to be defined?
I guess my personal legacy to be defined, like that no matter what, I was always there for my kids, always there for my wife. That I showed up as the most energetic, enthusiastic, the person that can show that it can be possible, it can be done. And quite frankly, that would also be aligned professionally. Show every officer like, hey, living like a healthy, happy, confident life like is possible. I don't need to become a statistic. I showed up for them energetically, positive, and enthusiastic, showed love. So I guess that's how my legacy I want it to be.
Yeah, and you sparked something that wants me to ask one more question, my friend, and that's about balance and creating balance in life. Police officers, as you know, have a very stressful job, and really, when you take off the uniform at the end of the day, you have to go back to living a normal life and sort of uh, separate yourself from the art of policing. So I guess what I'm asking is, how do you strike a delicate balance of wanting to be successful at your job, but really realizing that your job is important, but it's not what defines you throughout the course of your life, my friend. So how do you define balance as a law enforcement officer or a first responder for that matter? What are your thoughts there?
Well, balance is going to be individualized for each person. I think getting clear communication to yourself of what that looks like. So if someone wants to be, say, wealthy, well, what does that look like specifically? How much wealth do you need? If it's always going to feel like I always want more,
Yeah.
well, then it's going to feel like it's never ending. So I think of just the balance comes from like, okay, like what goals do you set for yourself? What expectations do you set for yourself? And then also just don't put like necessarily a hard time to it. Yes, if we have time constraints, like I want to reach this level of wealth or fitness in say 6 months or a year, could, help us get outside our comfort zones, sure, but then don't judge ourselves for maybe not accomplishing said goal in set time. Communication, set boundaries, and also speak from like what you wholeheartedly want versus what you feel others want for you.
Yeah, absolutely, my friend. And finally, tell me, Justin, if people want to get connected with you and the more they can do, buddy, what's the best way they can do that?
You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Justin Hesse. You can fill out an application on my Facebook profile, or you can reach me at email, justin@blueline-fitness.com.
Fantastic. Well, Justin, I really want to commend you for the work that you do to help first responders and police officers more specifically find mental, physical, and psychological safety and clarity, my friend. The work that you do is impactful and important, my friend, and I want to thank you for engaging in conversation with me this afternoon. It's most appreciated.
You're welcome. Thank you, Kevin. Have a great day.